right, this segment we're going to talk about how do I build a brand that stands out in my marketplace. Well, the good thing is this, you're in good hands because we brought many brands to fruition from concept to logo to 10-page website in 3 hours, turned out to be $1 million in sales within a couple of months. And ultimately, that is still a brand that operates till today. We work with Kroger, Pepsi, Ace Hardware, many different large companies like that. And that's just one. There's been many brands, over 13 brands that I personally brought to fruition with myself and my wife. And ultimately, this works. The tactics and the skills and the marketing behind this, it clearly works. And these are brands that are still active. By the way, look at the stats online where they say how many businesses fail. I want to say 95% in the first 5 years. So building a brand is going to guarantee you for success, right? Because first and foremost, get your focus, get your product, but ultimately, like I talked about on earlier videos, is being a marketing firm first that happens to sell your product second. You want to bring people in for the story. You're going to hear me say this over and over, but I firmly believe this because this is the path that we did and this is what actually works, right? So there's many different ways to do things, but a lot of these bigger companies are all about marketing, content marketing and marketing in general to get people enrolled in their movement and in their brand. The worst thing that anybody could ever do is a year and a half in business or 5 years of business or any amount of time later on, which means worse, turn around and go, I'm just going to change the company name and the logo. Like, that's the worst thing that you can do. You might be forced to do that for a certain reason, but guess what? Really horrible thing, because now the brand starts all over again. Name, address, phone number online, they start all over again, right? That's part of what builds a brand. Name, address, phone number, everywhere you can get it. It's called a citation. Having a good brand, having a good logo, having a good color, consistency, and a good color messaging that signifies what your brand stands for. So what we're gonna be talking about here is you wanna build a brand that doesn't just sell products, but instead building a real brand that actually creates emotional connections and loyalty. Because when you can create emotional connections with people, ultimately you will be one step ahead of your competitors who are here just for the transaction. And there's certain things that you can do because this is all based off of human behavior. And if you know that and you get into the psychology of it, the faster that you can do that, the faster that you'll understand how people tick and how they understand brands and why they understand what they want, what they desire, and what they may look for in certain products. And this is ironic because this is coming from me 25 years later on in business when I've gotten really focused on the psychology of this stuff within the last 7 or 8 years. Obviously, maybe a little bit before that was some of the things that I was doing, I just didn't paint the picture. But now understanding the way this works, I can see clearly now that ultimately these are what drive people to do certain things. I didn't know that. I thought it was what's the best trinket to add on? What's the best color to put something? Like, there was no formality to this, but there really is behind the scenes. And so when you're creating a brand, a story brand or a brand, and there's a good book, Story Brand, out there, which I guarantee and I recommend you should read it. I guarantee you'll have success with it. But when you're creating a brand, what it is it's perception plus emotion. So it's the perception of what people see in your brand plus the emotion that it gives to them, right? When you hear Apple, it drives an emotion. That's a brand. When you hear a certain car company, that drives emotion. When you hear something with the medical industry, that drives emotion. Well, it's your perception and it's emotion, and that's what the brand stands for. So understanding that, having a good idea of what that could be will help you build a solid brand. And this goes into picking the colors out as well. If you notice, blue equals a sense of trust, right? Black and red are a sense of bold. So these are two examples of many different colors that you could have in your business. Yes, there's different shades, there's different types, there's different fades, things like that. However, these are all things that you should be aware of in creating a brand up front. Now, without branding, you're just another commodity and you're competing on price. And so in this sea of people, the red ocean versus blue ocean, which the red ocean is definitely a saturated market. Blue ocean means there's not that much saturation. There's still a lot of opportunities available. And those are just keywords in the marketplace, at least on the marketing side. However, what you should understand is this: if you start competing on price, ultimately it's just going to be a price war to the bottom. What more value can you bring to your product or service that actually gets you better and gets people in a position to want to buy from you? And here's a pro tip on this, and I know this from firsthand experience. I had a brand We were doing great. We had a competitor come in, already started price war to the bottom. He put his prices half of what we did. Problem is he screwed himself, because now you can't get dealers and distributors because there's no margin. But now you just screwed the entire market, because you could have came in a couple of dollars under me, which I had just come in a couple of dollars under everybody else in the marketplace. Well, guess what? He didn't do that. And so instead of price warring to the bottom with my main brand, I created another brand that was a throwaway brand. The whole purpose of this was to price war to the bottom. My brand stays here, him and the other brand, they price war to the bottom, and then we shut them down, or whatever the case may be. Well, ironic enough, it got so bad they price war down. My main brand stayed here, which now we do great things. We design with Disney's and theme parks and NFL, NHL, major Fortune 50 companies, hotels across Vegas. However, these brands did price war to the bottom, and ultimately he had to completely rebrand his company. Well, guess what? That brand that I was going to throw away, that brand is still active today and brings in a couple $100,000 a year. So why would I throw it away, right? I can work with that. Not to mention, I also saw customers come in at the top. I saw them come in at the bottom, and I got a spread of the landscape on what customers want, their needs, wants, and desires. Obviously, problematic customers were in one, whereas not so problematic customers were in another. And it gave me a lot of perception and understanding of the marketplace, how people think, and ultimately a great branding story, and not to mention a learning experience from the whole thing. But the problem was this, is they price war to the bottom. Now, on the contrary, I've taught DJs on email marketing systems that this is another industry, and this is an example that I'll give here. Every DJ is just competing their services in the wedding industry of who can have the cheapest price. Well, instead of doing that, why not run a campaign where you say, look, I'm giving away a free pair of uplights, the lights that shine on the wall, like the one you see behind me here. Why not give away some free uplights, and then you get somebody on your email list? You find out their email address, when their wedding date is, so on and so forth, and then you get them on a drip sequence. That email drip sequence, which means emails that come out every couple of days, none of them do hard sales. Every email just talks about the fears, the problems, the potential questions a bride would have. What if your DJ doesn't show up? What if your sound system doesn't sound right? What if changes are made within a week of the wedding? Like, anything to put the bride at ease is the theme that's on the back end. What happens there? On the 9th or 10th email of a 10 or 11 email sequence, then you say, hey, would you like to jump on a call? We have a special promotion going on right now, blah, 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 right? You get them on a call, whether you put the promotion in or not. The problem is this: you were just competing against price before that email sequence went out. But now you actually have value built up because you were the expert, the subject matter expert, in front of their face over and over and over again for many different days or weeks or however long that email campaign is. So now when you get on a phone call with them, you are already perceived as a higher value with your business than somebody else is with their business that did not have an email campaign, that did not run an email campaign, that was another DJ that was just out there. Why? Because you were the consultant. You had your brand in front of them. They saw you many times. You addressed their concerns. Not to mention, you have a perceived value that's greater than just a value of competing against price and just every other DJ in the marketplace. So and they know, like, and trust you. So now when you ask for the rate, or you give them a rate and you ask them to book with you, they're going to be more well receptive to a higher rate than versus compare you against somebody else. And if you can understand this example and take this in your own business, this will help you out tremendously, right? Because what does it do? Elements that create a strong brand are branded in this, right? What they're doing is they're creating a brand promise. What's the result that you're going to deliver? What's the consistent voice, look, and messaging? All the emails had consistent messaging. Same with the brand, same with the look. You have to have this across your brand, right? Maybe it's a styled Instagram account that has a certain look. That all goes into your messaging, a certain filter over it, or a certain shade of color. Now, what's the emotional resonance? Like, what feeling does your brand evoke in somebody else? Like, what does it evoke? Now, what I would do is ask certain people, not your friends and family, put out a blind test. Ask a couple people, what if they were to look at your brand, what do they feel when they do business with you? I can bring up certain brands and you're gonna feel different ways. Walmart versus Target, Home Depot versus Lowe's, right? Right off the bat, two different things. You're gonna look at them different. Maybe a Publix versus a Kroger store or a Walmart itself. You're gonna get different brands with these different things, or different feelings with different brands. The same thing should be here with yours. You should understand what it is and get some feedback every once in a while. Now, the better you can understand your audience's desires, fears, and identity, ultimately you can brand to their emotions. And it's not just logic. If I can give a piece of advice here, there's something called the process communication model. It's 6 different archetypes of people, right? You got logic, you got emotion, you got a couple of others here. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but your messaging and your resonance that you can put out in your messaging, your look, your feel, different content that you put out, this will help people understand your brand better. When I build websites now, I used to just put websites up before that what I thought was going to be received well from the customer. Now it's all backed by science. I have a little bit of behavior in there, a little bit of psychology. I have a little bit of the PCM model in there, and I'm doing things in a very calculated manner now, where every word on the site is strategically placed, is strategically put together, is a certain font size, is a certain look, there's a certain color to it, and we're getting better results right out the gate. This may seem overboard to you. However, we're all a big calculation. This entire this entire world is a big calculation. And the better you can understand people, the better you can understand your brand and what people want. The same goes with your brand. So storytelling, if you build a consistent story that customers want to hear and want to be a part of, that's exactly what I said at the beginning. You're taking customers along for the ride. You're bringing them in. You're bringing them as part of the viewers of your movement, and they're in the front seat with you the whole time, and they will be your biggest champions throughout the entire business. Whether they're on the sidelines or not, remember this. When you post a piece of content, you have probably 95% of these are voyeurs that are seeing this content and they're not taking any action on it. So just because you don't have likes and follows and shares and all this stuff doesn't mean people aren't seeing it. I run stuff on my socials all day long, and I have people come up to me and, oh man, you're posting great content. I'm thinking, where were you at? You've never commented on it. You've never liked it. You've never shared it. But guess what? That's not the purpose. Maybe it makes them feel a certain way and they're not the type of person to comment, like, or share it. But they feel a certain way and they remembered it when we talked, that they actually brought it up in conversation. The same would happen for your brand. So keep this in mind when you're doing your social posts as well. Visual identity matters. You know, logos, colors, fonts, design, all of it is consistency, and it's actually part of your intellectual property and your design, right? So your design is all of this up front. What's your digital assets is what they call it. The look, the fonts, the colors, the sizes. You never want more than 2 fonts on a website is my whole goal. You never want more than 3 or 4 colors on a site, some of them being shades of a similar color. You want colors that actually match, all of this stuff. These are things that you need to understand, and I would take a look at these if you're doing some brand research and what works and what doesn't, right? Because your brand needs to be recognizable and relatable. And you have to invest in building your brand assets early. If you don't, it's going to be wish-wash. You're going to be changing things around, and there's going to be inconsistency. Yes, Pepsi did change their logo a few times, but you already knew them enough that there was 3 colors in the logo. You already knew what the logo looked like, so if they did something different with the logo, it wasn't a major change. Nike, removing the words and just having the swoosh. People already knew what it was by that point. You know, yes, the couple of people that didn't know what it was, they ask and then they find out, or they research and they find out later. That's the point that you want to be in. And some of my brands are the household names in the industry. That's when you've reached another level of success, and that's what you should be striving for. So the key takeaway on this is people don't just buy products, they buy brands that they ultimately believe in, that make them feel a certain way. So what's your brand and what are you going to make them feel? On the next one, we have, what would I do when a competitor copies my business? What should I do? This is a good one. I'm going to have fun talking about it. I'll see you there.